to provide the public with the opportunity to comment on matters that are germane to the items on the agenda. Each speaker is allowed up to 2 minutes to speak. Speakers may register in advance by signing up on the public comment sheet located at the entrance to the meeting room. Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum? All right, thank you. At this point, it is time for our chair remarks. I will keep my remarks very brief. Thank you for coming this evening to our specially called meeting. We appreciate, and we always have appreciated, the support of the community. We felt it to be necessary to call a special meeting given the complaint or a complaint that we received on Wednesday, May 22nd. In the morning of May 22nd. The complaint was very concerning, to say the least. And we would like to discuss some of the parameters that pertain to the Community Oversight Board, which we are now the Community Review Board. It is critically important that we discuss this complaint as a board. The complaint was not filed with the NCRB. It was filed with MNPD. We were made aware of the complaint, and the complainant did feel it was necessary for the Community Review Board to review the complaint and have access to it. And so with that being said, all of our board members were supplied with the complaint. We have read it, and we do want to discuss it very carefully and very thoughtfully, because this complaint could have serious implications on the work that we have done and will do in the future. And so that is why we have gathered here today, as well as to discuss our MOU, our Memorandum of Understanding with the Metro Nashville Police Department. As you all know, we have been working on an MOU for the past couple of months. Our previous MOU was thought to be null and void since July 1 of 2023, when the law to abolish community oversight boards was enacted by the Tennessee General Assembly. And so part of the complaint does address this issue, as well as the effect of accountability and transparency within MNPD. So those are my comments. We will move right into our agenda items. And first up is a board discussion on the OPA complaint that we received last Wednesday morning. Go ahead.
Yes, I just, because I don't know where this is going, I just want to legally make a statement or provide information to the board.
Please.
Really, it will not be appropriate for the board to discuss, the substance of a complaint that is the subject of an active investigation. Discussing the substance of the complaint could be prejudicial to the investigation and could affect the integrity of the investigation. The state law and the Metro Code pertaining to the CRB that governs the CRB says that members of the board and the executive director shall refrain from making prejudicial comments regarding any matter which may be reasonably expected to be reviewed by the board. Also, the state law states that the board and its staff shall not review an investigation prior to the closure of the investigation. So after the investigation is closed, this board will have the opportunity to review the matter and make recommendations in accordance with the state law. The board will have the opportunity to make its findings and its conclusions once that investigation is closed and you receive information that the investigation is closed. So in light of the state law, my advice is that you not discuss the substance of this complaint because of the prejudicial effect that it can have on the investigation.
Okay. Well, thank you, Attorney AK. I don't think we were going to address any of the effects of the complaint, but the complaint was not filed with the Community Review Board. It is my understanding that it was filed with the Office of Professional Accountability, and we were made aware of the complaint because some of the allegations that were in the complaint directly affected the Community Oversight Board, which now we are the Nashville Community Review Board, and what was in the complaint, I can say, was a matter of some of these allegations that were in it. So I do feel like we should be discussing it as a board.
Well, my understanding is the complaint was also provided to this board. So this applies, the provisions of the state law would apply in this situation. And so the board really should not discuss the substance of that complaint. And the board should let the investigatory process go through. And then once the investigation is complete, it can then discuss the complaint. Because the board does have that authority to review investigations, whether or not the complaint was filed initially directly with the OPA or whether it was filed directly with the board. In either case, this board, it comes to this board for review once the investigation is closed.
We have not began to review this complaint, and so I disagree with you on that. I do believe that it was made clear when we received this on the morning of Wednesday, May 22nd, that this complaint was being filed with MNPD, and we were made aware of the complaint. It was not filed with the Community Review Board. Member Goddard?
Yes, I'm inclined to agree with Attorney Eke. The key phrase for me was reasonably anticipated may come before the board. Mm-hmm. And I believe we fully anticipate that after whatever investigation is taking place, that it will come to this board to review that investigation. I believe, if I'm understanding right, and I may not be, that was part of what Attorney Eke was talking about. But I also want to ask her concerns I think we can talk about are the process of how this will be investigated. This is an unusual complaint. We've got a letter already that indicates the process will be a little different, and having a discussion of that, having input into that process, I think is something we can talk about without getting into the specifics of the complaint. That's got a period at the end, but just a question to you, Attorney Eke.
Well, I think you definitely can acknowledge the communication from MNPD regarding how they intend, this complaint is going to be investigated. But I just want to harp on that the substance, the allegations, the factual allegations that's contained in the complaint, it's what's going to be investigated. And the state law says, basically, once notification that an investigation is closed is provided to this board, whether such investigation was prompted by a complaint received by the executive director or otherwise. So you receive information regarding closure of complaints that triggers certain actions that you need to take under the law. So the fact that the complaint may have initially just been provided to MNPD and was copied to you, or however you got it, it's still a matter that's going to come before this board once the investigation is closed.
Okay, so here is, and Director Richard, I saw your hand. Here is where I have, I need some clarity because inside of the complaint are allegations of MNPD and high-ranking officials having a hand in this law. Right? So the law you keep referring to is within this complaint saying that MNPD had a hand in it. So I'm trying to figure out where do we, and I know we wouldn't, we would not, would we, number one, come back with a case in front of us pertaining to something that is so close to us, right? And then on the other hand, is MNPD handling the case that is pertaining to allegations of high-ranking members in the MNPD, and we're supposed to believe that they can investigate this without any bias or even without retaliation?
Well, what you mentioned, that is part of what is going to be investigated. That is part of the factual allegations in the complaint. So that is, you just can't separate one allegation and say, we're going to talk about this. It's all, there's a complaint that's been filed that has a bunch of allegations. Those allegations have to be investigated. I believe that you received an email from an officer in the MMPD regarding how they're going to investigate this matter. So, that's what you have. But ultimately, they, determine the appropriate manner to investigate the complaint to ensure that it's done appropriately and without any legally prohibited conflicts.
I'd like to jump in here, please. A couple things here. I think that number one, the complaint is not confidential. It is a public complaint sent by email via a retired officer and there's about 61 pages with multiple allegations. I think that this community deserves to understand the complexity of the complaint. They need to understand some of the allegations. I think that we have a fundamental responsibility to talk to this public who is here today about some of the allegations. That doesn't mean that we have to get into every single thing, but I do think that they're here because they want to know what happened, why it happened, and what are we going to do about it. Secondly, there is some concern for the OPA to investigate a complaint. These allegations some of them were through the process of the OPA process. And so I think that they deserve to hear something from us, and I understand your concerns, Attorney Eke, but we also have a responsibility to this public who voted for the Community Oversight Board overwhelmingly to tell them what those allegations are. And then we can refer to our attorney whether or not we have stepped over into the law. But I will not sit in this meeting and pretend like we have a 61-page document that has some very serious and critical issues and not say one word about it. I refuse to do that.
Let me say again, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but there is a process for complaints. There's a process to handle complaints to ensure that it's investigated and that in a manner that protects the integrity of the process. With regards to mention of an attorney, the attorney that this board has is only with regards to drafting, negotiating, and executing an MOU with MMPD. So it really does not pertain to this issue. So I just want to, that is my advice to the board, that consistent with the law, that it will not be appropriate to discuss the factual allegations in this complaint while there's an active investigation that's going on.
Thank you, Attorney Eke. Thank you for that legal advice. And so what we're going to do is discuss the complaint in a way that will continue to hold the integrity of the investigation. But the critical matter is that OPA will be investigating themselves, right? And that's problematic. And I think that's why we have to talk about this issue right now, here today, because that's the same way that the law was written, that we take complaints and we send it to OPA so they can investigate themselves. And what I read in this, without going into great detail, is that MNPD, it is alleged that MNPD did work to thwart the efforts of any kind of external oversight. And so if that is the case, then I don't have confidence that OPA can investigate this in an unbiased, transparent manner. And so I wanted everyone to have an opportunity to talk about this because these are serious allegations of misconduct. And without going into great detail in order to not compromise the integrity of the investigation, no matter who investigates it, because I am inclined to say that OPA should not be investigating this complaint, not at the level of allegations and the number of allegations that were made in this complaint. Member Goddard.
Let me say, I forgot to turn it
It's
on.
okay.
I share your concerns. The one point I would make is, and I don't think you meant to say this differently, OPA is not criticized in the complaint as I read it.
No.
The person who made a complaint was from OPA. They're part of the police department. I share the concern about them investigating it, but I think some of the comments could be heard as OPA is investigating itself. There aren't complaints against OPA, at least at this point.
It was mainly pertaining to how investigations are handled in OPA. Is that how you read it?
Yes, influenced by others on
Right,
OPA.
right.
Not that OPA was criticized as okay.
Yes,
Yes, is the short answer.
And so I guess here's what I want to make clear is that if others could influence the decisions that were coming out of OPA, then I don't have confidence that OPA will be able to provide an unbiased investigation because that same pressure could still apply.
I understand.
And Chair, I'd like to add, in response to Attorney Eke's concern about our outside counsel in relation to the MOU negotiation, as you are well aware, and everyone on this board, there are some implications regarding some of, the negotiation team. And because of that, I don't have any confidence in those people being able to move forward right now during this process. And so I would suggest that our attorney, because he's representing us in this MOU negotiation, will have some say-so in this process, because this is essentially about how we move forward with an MOU. That's why it's on the agenda.
So as I was stating earlier when we began to talk about the complaint that I don't think any of us, we were expecting this complaint. We didn't ask for this to be referenced and it to be sent to us. It came one morning last week and with very, very serious allegations of high-ranking members in the Metro Nashville Police Department. But with that being said, the COB is named in the complaint. And I think the last time we were all gathered here with the community eager to understand why litigation hadn't been filed on the behalf of the Community Oversight Board, I think what this complaint does is explain, in my opinion, probably why we weren't, why litigation hadn't been filed, and the involvement of certain individuals pertaining to the law that was assembled on Capitol Hill, and people who may have taken part in crafting that law. I think that's very, very concerning. And if that is the case, then I don't believe, and this goes back to my opinion of an outside investigation being a part of this and leading the investigation instead of an OPA lieutenant leading the investigation and soliciting help to do that. And I want us to be very clear on that. And I want to be clear, but I also want to know the thoughts of the other board members, because we have not discussed this. It had to be discussed in an open meeting, and that's why we've come here today. Member Brown?
Obviously, this is a sensitive subject, and allegations in a complaint are just that, they're allegations. That's why you have an investigation to determine what part of it is true. Given Metro legal department's advice, we do have, particularly on the MOU, our own attorney on the matter, and I wonder if it would be appropriate for us to go to executive session to discuss the legal implications with our attorney.
Okay.
Can I say something? I don't think there's a basis for an executive session at this time, really, based on what we have before us.
Thank you, Attorney Eke. Member Goddard?
I would say we can't go into executive session for two reasons. One is there has to be pending or threatened litigation, and we don't have that yet. Executive session is when the board can meet just with its lawyer without the public being able to hear the conversation, and it's narrowly prescribed in Tennessee law. The other is, as Attorney Eke mentioned, we don't have an attorney. I disagree with the assessment that Director Fisher gave. We don't have an attorney for this. Frank has not been hired. He's a very good attorney. I'm sure he'd give us advice, but he has not been hired for this. And there's a specific statutory requirement what you have to go through to get an attorney for a matter, and we've not done that yet. Now, we can go executive session and have Nikki advise us, Attorney Eke.
So,
I don't think we can.
So,
No,
let me, for clarification. So you're saying that, Frank is not our attorney for what matter? Anything other than the MOU?
The specific, I think you quoted the engagement, the approval by the legal director.
Yes, it specifically says that the services shall be limited to drafting, negotiating, and executing an MOU, and shall not include any other legal services. So it's very narrow to negotiation, drafting, and negotiation of the MOU.
Right.
Not in general to legal matters that may arise with regards to this board.
So, okay, so let me get further clarification. This allegation that this complaint that we received pertaining to allegations of high-ranking members of the MEMPD who are slated to be in MOU negotiations, right? Do you know that they are supposed to be in the MOU negotiations?
I don't know who is involved in, I don't know which particular individuals are involved in MOU negotiations.
Let me call their names.
But again, there's a process for legal counsel and that requires a determination by the director of law that there's a conflict. So that process was followed with regards to the agreement that's currently in place. And that agreement specifically sets forth the parameters of the legal services that are to be provided.
So the two members of the police department, of the command staff, who are and have been privy to the MOU negotiations in the past, I think that this is, number one, a conflict since they are under an active investigation. And number two, I believe that because Frank Brazil, our attorney, is representing us through this process in this negotiation, that we should be able to talk about that, because that's within the scope of what he's been hired to do.
To be clear, that is just who shows up at the table to negotiate? When you said he should be represented with respect to that, how broad is that?
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. You said Frank should be able to represent us with respect to that, and I'm wondering if you'd be a little more discreet as to what that is. But if it's who we're comfortable with being on the other side of the table in the negotiation of the MOU, that's fairly narrow. I'm asking if it's broader than that you think we could talk to Frank about. Well, could you give us some parameters on that, please?
Well, I think that we're here today to talk about the MOU negotiations on the agenda. And in order to talk about it in fully and talk about the negotiation process, when we know that there's people who are on the negotiation team, they are the main negotiators. How can we talk about the MOU negotiation without talk about the negotiation process without talking about that, which is included in this allegation?
I think we've got two things going on that are pretty different. One is the investigative process and whether the process has been suggested or determined, suggested by MNPD to us this afternoon is adequate, or whether there needs to be something different, others involved, so forth. That, I think, is very different than the MOU. Then we have who are we going to sit down with to negotiate the MOU. And the issue I see there is who's on the other side of the table from us, given that the people that have been there before are now subject to this complaint. Mm-hmm. And that, I'm open to considering having Frank involved in that. I think he and I are likely to be of the same mind, but I can't guarantee that. But I'm happy to have involved in that discussion. I don't see an issue about this complaint in the MOU discussions beyond who's going to be on the other side of the table right now. Mm-hmm. But that's a big issue. Don't get me wrong. That's a very big issue.
It is. And so I think that's the reason we're having this conversation, is because in light of this complaint. So let's just say we never received this complaint. Then those individuals would have been across the table from us, right? With these allegations unknown. But since we have received this complaint, and we know that the allegations that have been put before us have these people intricately involved in them in very concerning ways, then I think it does tie together, because now with this information, that I don't think we could negotiate anything in good faith.
I'm inclined to agree with that part.
Okay, okay. Whoa, okay. Member Brown, Member Witzel, and then Member Wynn.
Well, I'll withdraw my motion for executive situation. I think Metro Legal has raised an issue that concerning the complaint that we probably need to consider further before we get into specifics. But I do think that we need to come up, regardless of who Metro Police use for their negotiating team, we need to get our proposal finalized. And so I would suggest we move on to discussing the MOU itself, so we have a final draft of our proposal, and then we can see what happens as far as who, if any, Metro Police Department decides to use for their negotiating team. But I think we've been this long and we're very close to getting a draft finalized so we can start negotiating. I think we need to not waste this opportunity, since we've got a final proposed draft here, to go ahead and get that done so it's out there. So that's my suggestion, for what it's worth.
Thank you, Member Brown. Member Witzel?
I have two questions. I know Member Brown withdrew his motion for executive session, but my question is, if we were to go into executive session, does that involve both attorneys or one?
I will not be going into executive session because I think it will not be consistent with the Open Meetings Act, because there's no legal basis to go into executive session under the law.
Thank you. My next question is, if we can't discuss the substance of the investigation, can we discuss recommendations that were made in the complaint?
That is part of the complaint. So you have a complaint with allegations in recommendation on other matters that needs to be investigated. You just can't parcel out aspects of the complaint, because you get to look at the complaint and discuss the substance of the complaint after the investigation is completed. So you just have to wait and go through the process that's been outlined under state law. Again, these are allegations that will be investigated, that are subject to an active investigation.
Thank you.
Member Wynn?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for our attorney. What's the legal sanction? What's your opinion, the legal sanction, if we talk about this issue after you've told us that we can't talk about this issue? What is that? Is that a suit? Is that we're put off the board? What is the sanction for us?
Are you talking about executive session or
No,
just talking about
not today. If we talk about this
the
complaint.
complaint?
Right.
Well, it will not be consistent with the law. What the sanctions may be, I can't tell you.
Why can't you tell me?
Because I don't know what the ultimate sanctions will be that could be imposed on this board. It's just, it's not consistent with the law. The law says, like I read, the law says, for example, members of the board shall refrain from making any inappropriate or prejudicial comments regarding any matter which may be reasonably expected to be reviewed by the board. That's a provision of the law.
Okay.
If you violate, I don't know what the ultimate sanctions
Okay.
will
So you're
be.
not sure of the sanction? It would
That
be
you could, it can be anything. I just don't know. I couldn't tell
Anything.
you. Yeah.
criminal?
I can't tell you what it will be.
Okay.
I can tell you that the law says, what the law says.
Okay.
That shall is pretty mandatory.
Right.
Language means you shall not do something.
So the second question is, what part is Metro Legal playing in this complaint? Can you, if you can't tell me, I understand.
I
But are they
can't comment.
coordinating? Are they investigating? Are they managing? Have they interviewed anybody in this complaint so far?
What I do know is what's reflected in the email that was provided to the board. And that is really the extent of
Okay.
what I know and I'm able to comment on.
Thank you, ma'am.
Member Goddard.
Couple of things, trying to help us move along. First of all, attorneys are, it's unethical for an attorney to participate in a meeting they believe violates the open records law. Most people don't know that, but attorneys, some are schooled in that. So Nikki's not the only one that would not be attending. That may come as a plus for some of you if I step out, but that's what would have to happen. As far as consequences, I will use instead of sanctions. I'm not sure what sanctions there are for something that's not stated to be a criminal act. Potential consequences that I personally want to avoid is we might be precluded from, by a court precluded from, hearing this case when it comes back to this board. We might not have a quorum when it gets there. There might be other people appointed instead of us. I don't know how that would play out, but we risk being seen by a court as not having followed the law and in a manner that causes us to receive information at improper times and be biased when we head into a final determination on things. And I want to avoid that. I think we're on two paths that can happen simultaneously right now. I think what Member Brown said about proceeding with the MOU and getting it ready to go and get ready to put it on the table and start that negotiation is very important. I think engaging with the police department and perhaps the mayor, I don't know the politics as well as some, to see that we have an appropriate party on the other side, that we have confidence is not under the problems of these allegations. They are just allegations, but they are serious, and that makes it a problem to have the people named on the other side of the table, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see a reason those two can't proceed apace simultaneously, and if we can get both of those finished, then we're sitting down and negotiating, and not with people that are under the penumbra of this set of allegations. I want us to move forward with this, and I want us not to have that be people that are subject to these allegations.
Member Wynn.
Yeah, and I want to move forward too. And look, I have to say this. When I read this complaint, the first thing I thought was, I hope this is not true. Right? These are allegations. We don't know if they're true. They have to be investigated, like what we do here, investigate. But because we're mentioned in this complaint, I'm not sure why anybody with common sense would let us then investigate a complaint that we're involved in. There's a conflict there because of potential bias on this board against a police department or anybody else who has done something to us. We're an aggrieved party to this, if it's true. So my recommendation as we go forward, I would suggest that the mayor get involved. He is the boss, and appoint someone outside this board to investigate if we want the answers to this complaint. So I think we're worried about what we may eventually do, and I'll defer to anybody on the board. I can't foresee us ever investigating this because of our feelings about our power and our ability for oversight and the voice of the community of what's happening inside the police department, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that is the actual crux of this conversation, is because we are named in this. And I can't see us coming back and then now reviewing an investigation that we are a party to, which also says that the law that we continue to quote was crafted with the help of high-ranking officials in MNPD. That's problematic, and I don't see us coming back to us so we can investigate a claim that circumvented the power of the COB and oversight and transparency and accountability from external parties. That I don't see that.
One other thing to consider, I think, this wasn't just a state statute just for Davidson County. This impacts every citizen in the state of Tennessee. So this includes Memphis, Shelby County, or any other community that in the future wants to build an oversight board to hold their police accountable. That's the seriousness of this. So this is much bigger, I think, than an allegation of what's happened here in Nashville with legislators who we can't hold accountable at the ballot box, who've come to Nashville and passed a law to impact us, if it is true. I don't want to get into details, but we're generally speaking.
Right.
So this is much bigger, I think, than just the city of Nashville.
Remember, Wynn, I think you're right, but I also think that we're discussing this because it had a lot to do with Metro Nashville. And I do think the language when the law was being written and how it was published on the Tennessee General Assembly's page, where it says that it would abolish community oversight boards, it is my recollection and that we are the only community oversight board in the state of Tennessee. Now, there are civilian review boards and park and, other civilian and community transparency and accountability boards, but we are the only community oversight board in Tennessee. And I think 135,000 people deserve an answer, at least in the face of these allegations.
And I'd like to say something if I can. I mean, even if we receive this back, I mean, when I look at what the law says here, we would have to send this, if we reviewed this, right? I'm looking at the law here. If we reviewed this and we found that it wasn't, there were deficiencies in our investigation or our review, then it says that we would have to send this investigation back to the chief of police for determination on whether there should be, it says, requests the chief of police to conduct a further investigation of the incident, specifying additional information is needed. So we would have to send it back to the same command staff, that there was some potentiality of allegations of misconduct.
Member Holloway?
This is really nothing new. This is only proof of, the proof in the pudding. It come out to light, and it was time for it. And so we just got to deal with it. The whole process really started when representatives to make this law to get better control of the oversight board.
That is correct.
And it started, I think, a representative from Franklin, matter of fact, and had some connection with some folks with the police department. And so somebody has an agenda, apparently, that we're not aware of, but I'm thinking that coming out forward with this, being, have enough evidence to protect himself, and maybe it's good for us that someone else from outside of this board is making this complaint. And if you let the community, if the community see this, they would know that we need to do something. The mayor need to do something. We need to get control of this, because this is nothing new. It has gone on before, you know, but now the eyes are out for the public to see. And we need y'all support to back us also.
Thank you, Member Holloway. What I'd like to introduce to the board is a request of the mayor to not only be in charge of this investigation, but ask an outside entity to investigate this complaint. I do not have any confidence that MNPD can investigate themselves. Not with high-ranking officials, all the way to the top, having access to the investigation. And so it should come from outside of MNPD. And I would like to ask the mayor, as a board, to ensure that that happens. So I make a motion that we ask the mayor to review this complaint and assign someone outside of OPA to investigate this complaint.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Yes,
We didn't have a second.
yes, we did. Member Whitson.
Okay, I didn't hear him record, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Does this imply, and if not, we need a second motion to authorize the chair and the executive director to meet with the mayor about this?
Yeah, and so, you know, I think we may need that. But what we've been asking the mayor for since October was a meeting to discuss not only moving forward with, in good faith with the MNPD, but I think the conversation would now have to change because of what we've received and these allegations we've received in this complaint. So we can make a motion for the chair and the executive director to meet with the mayor, but I think we would have, the conversation will be totally different from what we've been requesting for many months now.
I wasn't suggesting that past conversation. We're sending a new letter on a very different subject.
Yes.
And rather than saying, here's a letter, send us a letter back, I would like there to be the opportunity to conversation at that point if the mayor is open to that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not sure it needs another motion. The chair and the executive director, I think, are authorized to
Meet with
proceed consistent with motions that have been made. I just want to point that out.
Thank you.
Okay.
You wouldn't need a motion on that, because you've already made a motion to go forward. So all the chair and the director need to do is go meet the mayor. So this is what the boards have decided and explain what we had discussed.
All right. So that is what we will do. We will also, I also want to bring to our recollection, I know that Executive Director Fitcher discussed our attorney for the MOU negotiations, Attorney Frank Brazil, representing us in any kind of litigation. And I do recall our meeting at the NAACP a couple of months ago when we discussed with Director Dietz obtaining outside counsel to see if we had, there was any viability of litigation pertaining to the law that was passed in last year. Do you recall that saying?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I want to, that's been mentioned twice now. I feel obligated to say this. Statements have been made. I want to be really clear, honestly believing that we did not hire the first lawyer to look at that statute and the potential litigation. The engagement letter specifically says we did, so that got lost in the process.
It did. It got lost in the process, and she ended up sending a memo to Laura Fox in Metro Legal and not to the Community Review Board. And so I think that was a part of our conversation when we had our meeting at the NAACP. And I wanted to make sure that everyone in the room in that meeting was very clear on the ask. So we would give the community the respect that it deserved pertaining to, is there viability for litigation? And so if that is the case, I think everyone agreed, we walked out agreeing who would be able to represent us and who we would like as an attorney to represent us. And so, I would like for Frank to do that, since we have worked with Brazil and Clark over more than a year or so. And so I really want us to give that some thought. So by the time we come back around, we'll be able to have a memo, because I think these allegations uncover a lot. They uncovered that we were not imagining things. We didn't imagine that that oversight and transparency in Nashville and Tennessee was not under attack. It just needed an overhaul. We were not imagining that we were, just somehow privy to our power being undermined. And so with these allegations, what it's saying is that people may have worked against us, who we were charged to provide oversight to. So if that is the case, then I think there is, plenty of reason for us to explore litigation as it pertains to the state law. Maybe I'm the only one that feels this way on the board, and if I am, please feel free to say so. But with what I read in this 61-page complaint that was provided to us from the complainant as a reference, then what it says is that we didn't imagine this assault. It happened, and people may have had a hand in it happening. Is there any more discussion regarding the complaint that we received? Member Wynn?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment about Member Brown's urgency for us to pass the MOU. I agree. I mean, we're kind of wandering around in the dark with no MOU between us and the police department. But I want to put it to this board, what person with common sense, what citizen would say, go ahead and negotiate with someone who you don't trust? Now, I mean, we don't know this is true, but, my mind goes to my time working as a police officer. And if we can't get the answers to this, it just seems to me that anything that comes from inside the police department at this point should be considered fruit from a poison tree. It's just something, I know that's a legal term used in criminal court, but it pertains to the integrity of who you're dealing with and the information they're giving you, the evidence that you have. And how could any citizen support us to sign a contract with someone who now may be subject to a state or a federal investigation for misconduct or malfeasance?
That's right. Member Goddard.
I hear that, and we got two choices. We can lay aside the MOU and wait till this whole investigation is finished, and we are advised as best we can what the truth or not of these allegations is. Or we can proceed ahead on dual paths like I talked about. Each has big downsides, I grant you that. I'd prefer to proceed ahead with the dual path if we can get different folks on the other side of the table.
Okay.
That's just one person.
Member Beard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've heard the discussions around the table. I I don't know exactly why I was pointing to this board, but my background has been in representing companies for over 2 decades. In representation of those companies, I have been the lead investigator of investigations across this world. And because the companies that I supported are domestic and international companies. I want to remind us of a couple of things, and I think they've already been said, but I do want to reiterate them. The first one is that these are allegations. These are very serious allegations that need to be investigated properly. I have developed training on the proper way of investigating complaints that has been used many times. The second thing I would like to say is that the individual who has brought this complaint has brought this complaint after thinking about this, after pondering, what does this mean for me personally to bring the complaint? And I think that one of the things that we have to be mindful of is the weight of this on them. And that's why it's very, very important to handle these investigations appropriately. The third thing I would like to say is that I will honestly say I have not read the 61-page complaint. I have been out of town. I have not been able to read it. But based on the comments of my fellow board members that have made the comment that the complaint states that it was brought against, it's allegations against us, that there were people working against this board being reconstituted. I don't know if I'm so surprised by that or shocked by that. Not because it's the police department and not because we're the community review board. In every investigation that you do, and the hundreds that I've done, there's one party against the other, and there's an allegation that one party is trying to stop the other party from doing something that they don't agree with. So I want us to put things in a little bit more perspective. I'm not from Nashville. I don't know the politics of Nashville. I don't know all of the politics that led to the creation of this board. But what I do know is that based on the seriousness of these allegations, our chair, Jill, called me and told me about them. She gave me a synopsis of them. I did a high review summary of it, but I didn't read it in detail. But I want us to make sure that we're stepping back, because we need to be objective in what we are saying the course should be in handling this. I agree with Member Goddard that we need 2 courses. Both of them do not have the best way to do this. But if we're waiting on the investigation of this one egregious case to go through, then how many other complaints might come in and we don't have a process and a way to handle those complaints? We are here for the community. We're here to investigate the community complaints. I do understand this one has come in. I understand how egregious it is. I understand that members of this committee and this board believe that lends itself to some of the things that we thought and we understood could have been going on. But we have a community to serve. And so while we are contemplating on what to do with this one complaint, there are other complaints that we've received. There's other information that we need, and we're not able to get that information until we get this MOU done. So it's my understanding that we are a community review board. And community is the most important aspect. my father, my late father, was the longest-serving commissioner, city commissioner in the city of Ripley, Tennessee, and Lauderdale County, Tennessee, in the history of the county. African-American male. Part as commissioner, he was the police commissioner. As the city commissioner, he was assigned to the police department. My granddaddy was a police officer. He was the first black police officer in Kansas City, Missouri. My uncle was the first black detective in Kansas City, Missouri. My grandfather, my daddy was police commissioner. I represented the Memphis Police Department. I have Memphis Police Department, two of my cousins. One was a second-ranking officer. One led one of the biggest precincts there. I know police. I have done these investigations myself of police departments. What we do need to make sure that we are doing this as objectively as possible. And one of the things I would ask you when you do speak to the mayor and when you ask him to assign a third party, that you agree to that third party. That's one of the main things we're forgetting. We got to let our emotions back on this. We need to ask him not only to do a third party, that we are in agreement that that third party is going to be objective. That we are in agreement as the board, because we are here for the community. So board members, community, let's make sure that we keep our main focus in line. We have a number of complaints that we have received since this board was created that we don't have a process for. We don't have documentation we need. Just as well as this complaint has come in that is important, we got a list of people who are waiting on us to do what Nashville voted for us to do, and that's to review their complaints. So that is all that I have to say, and I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Beard, and I think you are correct on a lot of fronts. And I think the reason why we took a vote and to ask the mayor to assign a third party is because in the email that we received earlier today, it was said that a third party would be involved, but they didn't give the name of that third party. They didn't give any details regarding who that would be. And it sounded like, from my inference, is that they would be picking who that third party is. And this was coming from the Office of Professional Accountability, and that is unacceptable.
I don't disagree.
And so that's why we want to ensure that not only is this investigation objective, but it's fair, and that it leads to the truth. And no matter what that truth is, we need to get to the bottom of it. And I think what we have experienced and what this board and 135,000 people who may not know that they've experienced, but we have experienced a lot of undermining and undoing of the will of the people. And especially if these allegations are found to be true. And let's just say that they are true, then everything that, all the hard work that Oversight Now did, all the hard work that our community organizers did, all the hard work that ordinary people did to ensure that there was accountability and transparency of our law enforcement in Nashville, Davidson County. Are you telling me that it's alleged that it was undone by the very people that we were charged to oversee and provide an objective opinion to? That's unacceptable.
I don't
And I
disagree.
know you know that. I know you know that, Member Beard, but that's part of the reason why we're here and the main reason why we're having this discussion.
I don't think anything I said disagrees with you.
I know.
It doesn't. And I don't think that shouldn't be fair, but that's why I'm giving you my insight about how you need to change when you speak to him to ask the request. The email does says they're going to bring in someone. They did not. I did read the email. That's why I said my only thing about this whole situation is to ask them that you are joint deciders on who that person is.
Yes, we are going to do that.
Thank you very much.
Can I interrupt here for 1 second? I spoke to the mayor's office. I spoke to Ms. Wilson today, and I asked her about that third party, and she understood it to be Metro HR was that entity, not necessarily an outside or external. I told her that our wish would more than likely be that it would be an external, a third party outside of Metro HR. And so we're waiting to hear that. And I just wanted to say one thing because I do think that Member Beard said something of significance. We do have over 50 cases now that we need to move forward on without body-worn camera footage, and we have worked really hard to have some of those cases. They're working on those reviews now to be able to present those in June, although we won't be able to finish them, and what we will present won't be a completed investigation without having the body-worn camera footage, which has been the area of contention since this process started, because they keep pushing it out to, 4 or 5 months to be able to get that. And I'm hoping that this MOU process would expedite us being able to review those instances where they have exonerated officers so that we can, or maybe not, but just so that we can move this process forward. We cannot withhold or withstand another backlog of 40, 50, 60 cases and be successful. It's just not going to happen. And so we need an MOU. I think that there are people within the command staff that can negotiate this process, that we have confidence in, that can do this work and sit at the table and get this MOU negotiated.
Thank you. Member Brown?
I agree with Member Beard entirely on the fact if we're not careful, we're going to totally block ourselves out with an MOU, and we're not going to be able to proceed with any of the complaints we have. So I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the draft MOU, the last one. We have 2 MOUs with the same date. So we need to be careful when we're throwing out draft MOUs that we make sure which one is the last one. And I've read both of them. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between them. But the last one that I think was furnished the board, I move that we adopt that, and then we proceed with the MOU process and not get ourselves wrapped around the axle with who's going to be on the other side. Let's get our proposal out there and push it. And that way we can determine whether or not we're going to get records with priority over, we're just not going to be put at the end of, with public requests, that although we're limited to public request documents, we need to ensure that our MOU gives us priority on getting those documents. And we can't do that unless we get a draft MOU out there and get meetings. And otherwise, we're going to be shut down from doing anything on those complaints. And so I move that we adopt the last draft MOU and march and proceed with attempting to set up a final meeting with the police department. Whoever they put on, then we can debate whether or not they're appropriate or not, but we need to get our MOU drafted and get it out there so we can get started getting and hopefully get some priority on getting the documents we need and to review what the OPA is doing. So that's my motion, and let's see if we get a second and whether we can debate it and vote on it.
Is the MOU negotiation a bullet point on this?
It is, and we haven't gotten to that yet. We're about to go into the MOU discussion.
You could argue we've wandered across that bullet.
We have, but I will say, if you haven't had an opportunity to read the latest draft of the MOU, I think we would need to do that before we made a motion. We received that a couple of hours before we got here, right? And so I think everyone needs an opportunity, Member Brown, to read the last draft of the MOU that was sent today.
But that's gonna put us back a whole month.
One paragraph different from the original.
Right, can we have, when we get to that, have Mr. Brazil come up and talk about the changes that he made in his draft?
Yes.
They were very insignificant
Yes.
changes.
Yes.
Okay. Attorney Brazil, can you come now if you're ready? I can. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Chair, there were two drafts circulated in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
Can you hit your button so that the microphone kind of, yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Chair, there were two drafts circulated in the last 24 hours. The draft that Executive Director Fitchard circulated to the board today is the operative draft that Mr. Brown is referring to. The only change added to the current draft is in the issue of administrative leave. And if you give me a moment, I'll pinpoint that change and read the new language out loud.
Okay.
Roman numeral number 9 on page 9. Administrative leave and alternative duty assignment. The executive director may notify the chief of police in writing with all available detail that the CRB has received an allegation of misconduct that, if true, the executive director believes would be reason that a police officer's continued presence on the job may be detrimental to the department or public safety. The executive director shall simultaneously notify OPA of the allegation. And the added language is a new paragraph that is B, and that language is, if command staff is implicated in the allegation, then the executive director may also notify the mayor. That is the operative change to the new draft, and I'll also reference a paragraph that is on page 12,
Okay.
and that is in section 14. There's been a change to the language with no change in substance, and that is involving whenever the CRB or any federal, state, or local law enforcement agency requests from the department information about a personnel file, disciplinary file, or job performance of a current or past sworn officer employee of the department, then the department will ensure that copies of the following are provided to the requester, whether or not they're within the scope of the request. And that's what the old operative MOU was saying. It's just the language was confusing.
Okay.
So those are the changes, and this draft has been reviewed several times, and I do believe is in good form. And I do share the urgency of the board to begin the conversation with circulation of a draft.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions for Attorney Brazil while we have him? Okay. Thank you. Member Wynn.
Yeah, I just want to say this. My concern earlier about the MOU wasn't that we should not have one. I agree with Member Brown and the other members that we need a contract. We need a guidance for how we go forward. But I just wanted to put on the record that this complaint has really made it a little harder for us to negotiate for that contract. Again, these are allegations. We don't know if this is true or not. But I agree. We have to get back to work and look at the day-to-day cases that come into this board.
Thank you, Member Wynn. Okay. And so I don't think anyone is in disagreement in moving forward with the MOU. It's who we negotiate with. And that is the, prime subject. We have to know, since the people who would be involved, typically in this negotiation, they've been named in in this complaint. I don't think we can go into MOU negotiations in good faith with these allegations hanging over them. And so with that being said, we would have to identify, or MMPD would have to identify someone else to be at the table. And potentially we would, of course, we already have our MOU negotiation council, and of course our MOU chair, but we also need to make sure that whoever is on the other side is not involved in any of this 61-page complaint. And just so you know, this complaint is chock full of allegations, and they are not favorable, and could potentially show a pattern and practice of misconduct. And so just knowing that, we have to be sure that whoever is on the other side, that we have confidence that we can negotiate this MOU so we can get this work done. Member Beard and then Member Brown.
I just have a question. When we negotiated the first MOU, did we have was a lawyer involved from Metro Legal?
Yes, I do believe a lawyer was involved. Remember,
We've had two MOUs.
Okay, so
The very
which
first one, and Dr. Hildreth is here. She negotiated that MOU agreement.
Okay.
And then pulled me in at the end. And I think it was Bob Cooper from Metro Legal who was on there. Cindy Gross was there. And then the others who were from MMPD. The second one, it was the same. Dr. Hildreth, myself, someone from Metro Legal, and then the officers.
Okay, so we did have legal counsel from Metro, for both of them, right?
Yeah, they weren't directly negotiating the
Mm-hmm.
process. The process was negotiated by Dr. Hildreth, and at the time it was Chief Hagar, and they negotiated back and forth, and if they had questions, they kind of, helped assist.
Gotcha.
But she led the negotiation process.
Understood. Basic question is, was a lawyer involved? And I think that's the case. That was there. And we have retained our counsel to help us in the negotiation. When we go to the negotiation, are we planning to speak, the board members speak and the lawyer advise, or are we going to allow our lawyer to lead the negotiations?
Go ahead, you want to speak to that, Member Goddard?
Only one board member can go to the negotiations under the Open Meeting Act.
Okay,
Frank will be the lawyer. He will lead the negotiations. I am genetically incapable of not speaking on occasion in these things. So I've got a lot of history, and as things come up, I will try to be helpful in my comments.
okay. And so on the other side, will Frank be negotiating with the MPD lawyer, or will he be speaking to the MPD officers or
The dynamic
directors?
so far has been speaking to the officers,
Okay,
but we're going to have some different folks, it looks
Yeah.
like, so I don't know, but that's been the dynamic. in the
okay.
past.
So I'm going through that so I can understand the history, because I haven't been here. So a question may be, to me, is that if we're questioning who typically are the ones who are sitting across the table and they're in the actual complaint, that we ask to negotiate lawyer to lawyer. You don't have to find, so I'm just throwing this out as a procedural question, right? So our lawyer for the board is going to represent us in negotiations, and we're just gonna have one person in the room. I'm just thinking this through. So why don't we ask them, so typically on the other side, you have the Metro Nashville officers, right? And their lawyers advising. But we're not doing that this time, right? You had just you and Ms. Hildreth that negotiated, right? So this time we have our own lawyer. So do you think about asking Metro to go lawyer to lawyer? You're questioning the people that they typically have, right? You're saying they're named in the complaint. So since we're going to have our lawyer speaking on our behalf, why don't you have Metro lawyers speak on their behalf and take out the officers? I don't know if that's a possibility. It's lawyer to lawyer. We see negotiations all the time where it's lawyer to lawyers. The clients are there, just like, remember Gardner's gonna be the client for Frank in the room. And I don't know if we can do that.
I would suggest that the negotiating team be given the flexibility to do that as seems to work best.
Yes.
This particular dynamic I have seen, and I'm not being critical of any individual involved from the police side, a lot of the breakthroughs have been talking through directly to the command staff in terms of we can't do this or we can do that, and working for alternatives and getting that worked out. If all that has to come and go through the attorneys back and forth, we can maybe get there, but it tends to be awfully inefficient on
Okay.
some points, not all,
Okay.
but some, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
I didn't know. I was trying to
No, I
find a way
understand.
to
No,
take away
I would like to be able
the
to go both.
dynamics of the police department, since we don't believe that many of them who would be across the table are going to be the ones that are naming in the complaint.
I would start the way I described, and if we're running into that issue, step back and say next meeting needs to be different.
Gotcha.
And what we're asking for, Member Beard, is that the chief,
Them to-
that, the people who will be across the table, who have typically been across the table, will not be there.
That's what I'm
Right.
trying to find out.
Yeah.
Is there another alternative way we can do this?
And not only not be there, but not be advising, and, not
There you're right.
associated with this
That's right.
process at all.
That's why I wanted the lawyers to be, that's why my suggestion was that, because that takes away the issue of you not trusting the people that would typically be there.
But I will say, even in thinking about this MOU negotiation and how we move forward, that seems very transactional and not very relational, because we're trying to get somewhere, right? The Community Oversight Board was created so we can not only provide oversight and have accountability and transparency, but we hope that it will lead to better relations with the community. And so how we negotiate and how we work with and interact with MEMPD can't be solely transactional, not every single interaction. So how do we get to this point? And I think this complaint, although it's just one, and it's 61 pages, that, we have a lot to work through before we can even get to having a normal relationship, where police officers are policing our communities in a fair and transparent way. Member Brown?
I think what we need to do is we need to get our MOU adopted as the board. We've authorized a committee to meet with the mayor, and that's where we can fight out, and the mayor is gonna have the whip hand there as to who will be the Metro Police Department's representative. But we're not gonna get there until we get our MOU on it, and that's why I think it's absolutely critical that we adopt the MOU we have before us. That MOU committee has met several times with a good member of majority, I think a majority of the board on the committee are attending. So that's why my motion is to adopt it. Who the police department puts on for their representatives, I think that's what the chair, when you all hopefully meet with the mayor can weigh in on that, and the mayor's got a copy of the complaint, and he can decide, he can tell the police department who's gonna be negotiating. But we've got to get an MOU adopted first.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Do you have a motion?
I made one.
Can you repeat it?
That the board adopt the last draft of the MOU, period.
Okay,
And I thought I heard a second, but
I didn't.
I second.
Mayor, Ms.
I
Beard,
did second.
Member Beard. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have a question.
Yes.
Adopting the new process with the amended change on the new paragraph. be included
with the latest draft.
with the latest draft.
Okay, so the latest draft of
That's
the
what I,
MOU.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my motion.
Okay, so it was the latest draft. Okay, all right. So we're okay with this latest version of the MOU?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And so do we already have a plan on, circulating that MOU and, creating some sort of memo with it? Now, would you speak to that process and what that would look like, Member Goddard?
Yes, Frank and I have discussed, we are preparing a memo on a couple of legal issues we discussed with the legal director that he is considering. One of them, Member Brown mentioned earlier, we're limited to public records. Frank and I don't think we are in certain circumstances, so the issues like that to press. What the legal director suggested, what we're going to do is present some short memos on those legal issues, give the MOU itself to the legal director to pass on to the police department, and also identify in the document the sections that are unchanged from where we were in our negotiations last time, particularly now that we hopefully have different people across the table. It's going to be important early on, I think, to show them where our language came from, what our thinking is, rather than just throw a document and we'll get together and talk about it.
Okay,
That can proceed very quickly, I think.
okay. Any questions?
Any suggestions?
Okay, all right. So we will proceed with, the transferring of the MOU to to Metro Legal. Yes, along with memos, pertaining to our, ask, and our position, as it pertains to the law and how we see it.
And I would anticipate, Frank, if you have any concerns otherwise, those would go to all board members at the same time they go to Metro Legal.
Okay,
Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Okay.
okay, sounds good. It's now time for our public comment section. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment? Edie Fisher, you have that list? Yes. Go ahead.
Mr. Sekou Franklin? Hit the button there. You're not hitting it.
Greetings, my name is Sekou Franklin, and Dr. Sekou Franklin, I was involved in the oversight now, and I wanted to comment about the complaint, and just maybe one question that could be answered after this is, was a complaint actually filed with the oversight, with the review board, or was it just, here's information? The latter would suggest that it's open for a substantive comment. I should also point out that MMPD releases information and mugshots of folks even without a thorough investigation. So I just want to make sure I point that out in terms of the investigation part that you mentioned, that it happens all the time. But I'll say this in my brief time that in our experience, when it comes to these complaints, and this is coming from MMPD folks who have talked to us, so I want to make sure. MMPD is very skilled at covering up and burying complaints. And it sounded like there was a conversation, no disrespect to Metro Legal, but it sounded like there was a meeting before the meeting. It sounded like that talking points were ready before the meeting in order to prevent a substantive comment from coming out, a substantive conversation. And I'll say that's part of the obfuscation and the cover-up. Cover-up might not be the right word, but that's part of what goes on. There's always a meeting before the meeting. And it sounds like that this is what happened before this meeting, that there was an attempt to prevent a deeper conversation about this complaint, which we don't know if it was actually a complaint or just information here it is to know about. Just to give you an idea, I'll be straight up honest with y'all, most mayors in this town are afraid of the police. They're averse to challenging the police. They're averse to holding the police accountable. If this complaint is very serious and you want to do something about it, it's best to be transparent and open about it, because you never know if the complaint can get to the community through a back channel. And it's best to talk about it openly and publicly before that happens, because if the community gets hold of a complaint where there's malfeasance, or allegations that appear to be malfeasance, then it can actually backfire. Those are just my comments about this, this 61-page complaint allegation, but I'll say if you come from the standpoint that we'll turn it over to the mayor, let the mayor get involved, mayors are afraid of the police. Come on, folks. Every single activist who's worked in this town for the last decade knows that the mayor is afraid to challenge the police, and then you have to work from that standpoint. No disrespect to the mayor, but that's all I have to say. Best to get this complaint out in the public before it gets to the public before you know it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
Miss Michelle Flynn?
Hi, folks. Thank you so much for the work that you're trying to do with a lot of barriers put in front of you. And thanks to the community who always keeps showing up. It's just the community has your back. But I want to say two things. I want to say about the MOU, it's exhausting. It has been exhausting from the very beginning. The department has dragged its feet on signing an MOU and has held up this board and the staff from effectively carrying out on behalf of this community what needs to happen in terms of complaints by people in the community. And as a result, people do not believe that if they have a complaint, that it's worth coming forward. And so it has reinforced the power of the department, the police department, to do what the heck it wants to do, and that it will not be held accountable. And I think the AP report that Nashville Public Radio just put up on its website this morning, I believe it was this morning, or yesterday morning, about the fact that all over the country, right, police departments are not enforcing the law. They're not following the law that's been written about how you deal with the public when you're interacting with them in situations that are volatile. And so, you know, we don't trust police out here. I'm an old white woman. I don't trust the police out here. And if I don't trust the police out here, I'm telling you, people of color in this community do not trust the police. So that's one point. And it's disgusting to me that this police department is left in a position of dragging its feet again. I applaud you all for all your efforts now, once again going to the police department and trying to work out an MOU. But it's exhausting to this community to see the length of time it takes. This bill was passed last summer, and you're still trying to get a meeting with our mayor who was elected, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. I would also say, bless our mayor's heart. That's what I'm going to say to you. Bless our mayor's heart. But I appreciate your feeling that going to the mayor now, who has not taken a meeting with your chair and with your director, it's so insulting. Like, on behalf of the board and on behalf of the staff, I am insulted that this mayor has not come forward and met with you all. Again, it tells us in the public that our vote, our willingness to come forward, the work that people did, the people who continue to die in this city, 8 people, Clemmy said the other day, Clemmy Greenlee said, 8 people died just recently at the hands of police. The investigations have to happen. The work needs to be done. I don't trust the mayor to move the department. I don't have an answer for you about how to move forward. But I'm just saying, bless his heart. And I do write letters to him. I will write him again. I'll say, please watch this. Please hold the police accountable. That's his job. But the fact it hasn't happened till now, he's the mayor. Why is there not an MOU? Right? So there's some point at which somebody with authority in this city needs to stand up and do the right thing. So I think I should stop there. Thank you very much for all you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn. Yeah.
I would like to.
Just a point of clarification. We did meet with the mayor early on, but we have not been able to have a meeting with the chief. And so the mayor stated that he wanted to be in the meeting with the chief, But for whatever reason, the chief's schedule has been so packed that we haven't been able to have a meeting with the mayor and the chief at the same time. And so that is where we continue to run into an issue where the chief of the police will not come to the table. Thank you. And another point, we were provided this complaint as a reference. It was not a complaint filed with the Nashville Community Review Board. It was filed with the Office of Professional Accountability.
Jamel Campbell-Gooch.
First, I want to read into the record as a former board member, just to clarify and provide a little bit of a history lesson. Before in the previous board, and I'm not going to call any names, we had former judges, former attorneys in this town that has done incredible work. We had restorative justice practitioner. We had a person who worked in the White House under the Obama administration. We had people like myself that were from distressed communities, 37208, which had the highest incarceration rate in the country. So I would like to say that we were fairly talented, including Dr. Hildreth. And some of you all also served on that board as well, and it was an honor to work alongside such decorated people that I would never run into. And with all of that skill, once again, police did not negotiate in good faith. And that's just a little bit of a history lesson. And also, I want to also say, board members, if you need those type of history lessons, people who have been here since the beginning are sitting in the crowd, and they can also let you know what has been done, because you are blocked, you are stalled, and if we continue to do the same thing, we will continue to be blocked and stalled. I mean, there's lessons that are sitting in the crowd that will help this board make strategic decisions in the moment that can help unstick and unstall you all. But again, to have faith that those people are going to come to the table in good action and in good motion with a moral grounding puts you at a defeated position early on. So one thing I want to challenge board members to do is think strategically with history as a context on how you all can creatively put motions forward that unstick and try to solve this problem in a creative way. We have motioned several times for the mayor, whoever it is, including Cooper and the former police chief, to help fix the MOU's problems as they have consistently reared their ugly heads. But every single time, they have responded in the exact same way. Stalling, not coming to meetings, not showing up for motion-called meetings, and not becoming in front and showing up for community. So, with that being said, I just also want to focus on a couple of things, right? The original architects of this board put a position in this board to lean towards the experience of people that grew up in economically distressed communities like myself, because we have an intimate experience with policing. And because of that, this board has always did a great job of leaning towards those voices. So I want to challenge those that come from communities like myself to throw motions on the table, because one of the things that this board has is the transparency that Dr. Sekou talked about before. That is your strongest weapon, right? You are going against what they call the blue veil, or a code of silence that this board was created to make sure that community members can see behind. Former law enforcement that has occupied this board have often talked about that code of silence, right? That we all know about. But in lifting that code of silence, you all have to be the clean glass next to the dirty glass. So you all have to go the extra mile of providing tremendous transparency to make sure that the community can hold you all's ground. Because if we lose trust in you all, then we actually don't have anyone at the table negotiating on our behalf. So I want to employ this board to creatively think about ways that you can ensure transparency that may be very uncomfortable, that may feel like a lack of strategic ability, that might even slow you down. But what it will do is it will bring community along with you so that when we are called to charge into the fight, we have the information and we can participate sooner. So those things I just want to give to the board, right? History is a context. Call on people who have had these similar experiences so that you all can strategically not be blocked. And then continue to call for a very uncomfortable amount of transparency so that you all can serve as an actual clean glass next to the blue code of silence, which is the dirty glass in this situation. So I want to thank board members, but I also want to challenge you to throw more creativity at the wall, because you all have networks in this city, you all have worked in this city, and this board requires you all to show up more than what is the bare minimum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell Gooch.
Susan McBride?
I have nothing to add.
Okay,
I think it's all been said.
okay. And Cheryl Huff?
So, hello, everybody. So, everything has been said, and it's been said excellent. But what I want to say is that there was 135,000 people that came out and voted for Metro, the COB. What was Metro Legal? What side did Metro Legal play on? That was a smack in our face. We don't have trust in the police. The chief, I think, is just sitting in a position but don't carry no weight. I think that the mayor, you all said that the mayor is the boss of the chief, and the mayor is afraid. The mayor is not going to push anything to make them do what they're supposed to do. I've had a conversation with the chief to come out to an event. He said, I'll come, but who's in the room? Because it's certain people I just don't want to deal with. Who? The community? It doesn't matter who it is you don't want to deal with. It's our community. I have a son. Other people have sons, grandsons that's being shot and killed, and nobody's being held accountable. But it's only happening in our community. We have, back in 2000 and I think it was 15 or 16, there was a leak from the police department that came to us. I was working with the NAACP, and it came and it had the President Hale's name over it, and it exposed all kinds of stuff that was happening. I made a phone call to the mayor. I made a phone call to the chief, which Anderson was the chief at that time, and everybody started running like you turn on a light and the roaches start scattering. It starts scattering. But when you start naming names and then people start telling on people, just like Mr. Sekou said, if we don't get the information now from you all, when we get it, because we're going to get that leak, and it's going to come to us. And when it comes to us, it's going to be bad. It's going to be real bad, because then we're going to have the national to come in and discuss this. I know what it is. I already know. And it's bad. It's really bad. So for you all to say, let's deal with the MOU and let's deal with the issues, all of these other complaints, what are you going to do with them? You don't have any power. They're not letting you do anything. So we need to get this message out, find out what's going on, and we need to work on the MOU with power. And we need to hold the mayor accountable. Nobody's holding him accountable. I told him he's on probation for 4 years. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, those 4 years, you won't be elected anymore. And right now, his probation looks really bad. So we need to hold him accountable. We need to hold that chief accountable, no matter if they let him do his job or not. You have that seat, and you have an obligation to the community. And we pissed off right now. Just want you to know. Thank you.
No one else for public comment.
Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we have one more for
Oh, I'm
public
sorry,
comment.
Ms. Sheila. I'm sorry. She just, sorry.
For those of you who don't know who I am Sheila Clemens Lee. I am the mother of Jacquees Clemens. I am his voice. And Ms. Beard, I think you said that you're not sure why this board was created. Oh, okay.
No, ma'am.
Why you was appointed to this board.
That's correct.
My son's blood is what stemmed this board, along with Daniel Hambrick, 15 months later. The people wanted this board. The people wanted accountability. The people wanted transparency. And that's what we need to get. I don't know if these allegations are public knowledge, but I'm like the rest. Once it comes out, it's gonna be hell. I feel like this board was dismantled, the COB, is because you all was getting close to exposing what that department was doing. And they had to put a stop to it, put restrictions on everybody. But you can guarantee the public stands behind you. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't have never voted it. And I'm asking you all to make it public knowledge. Sometimes you got to have those uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes you have to hit the snake's head off.
Amen.
In order to get where you need to be. Because long as the grass is growing and those snakes keep slithering, guess what? They're going to keep on biting us. And it's time to put a stop to it. I'm trusting you all to have the thickest skin possible to stand up for the people. Because to me, that's why you all are on this board, is be our voices. And please, when you're making your decisions, please keep in mind Jacquees Clemens and Daniel Hambrick. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Can I just say one more quick thing? I swear to God, I'll be just really quick, which is this.
Yes, ma'am.
One of you asked the question, what would happen if you released the report? Right? And there was some question, I thought it was a question of, will you lose your positions on this board? And I say to you, so what? Lose your positions. Be willing, as is being asked to Ms. Clemens with you all, please be willing to lose your positions to do the right thing, which is to let the public know. Because if this goes up all the way to the state legislature, and this city did not stand up and sue the state on behalf of the Community Oversight Board, on behalf of this community, it really does stink. You know, it's snakes. It's a lot of snakes. And I just as our good friend was saying, have the courage to go ahead and put your board positions on the line, because you're trying to do the right thing for the community, right? It's not about the police. It's not about the legislature. It's not about the lawyers' recommendations. Sometimes lawyers are here to advise, but they do not have the power that you all have to go ahead and step up and say, we're not going to sit back anymore because this stinks all the way up to the state legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn.
Attorney Eke, is this document a public record?
It is a public record.
I'm not able to, I have to actually review the entire document, and it has to be reviewed to determine whether it's a public record or not, all of it, or any of it at this point. So I can't tell you this minute that it is a public record.
I think it might be helpful if you would do that review and advise Executive Director Fitchard And if it is, it can then be provided further.
I was under the impression that it was, it is, I am under the impression that it is a public record, because it was not a complaint filed with, the, NCRB. It was actually provided to us for reference. And so, it would, at least to my understanding, if it was a public records request, then we would be obligated to provide that, complaint to you.
It was not stamped confidential or anything of that
It was
nature.
also provided to the mayor's office.
It was provided to the mayor's office as well.
Dr. Hildreth?
All right, so.
Dr. Hildreth, we have another public comment?
Dr. Hildreth, you have a comment? Good evening. Good evening, yes.
Thank you, Phyllis Hildreth, 37208, former member of the Community Oversight Board. I want to thank you so deeply, each and every one of you, for your service, for your continued service, for your commitment to clarity and transparency in this meeting, even having it. I would like to state on the record, by way of just level setting, that I have no knowledge of the complaint, the complainant, the substance of the complaint, beyond what I saw in the public notice of this meeting and what I've heard in the testimony in this room. During the 4 years that I served up there, and that we spoke to the community here, we insisted on radical transparency every step of the way. To continue on with my professor colleague's history lesson, November of 2018, that week right before Thanksgiving, when we were still figuring out how it even comes together, what the application would look like to get on it, one of the things that we requested is that there be a dedicated website for the board, and that every single possible document that was entrusted to us would be put on that website. I was rising to speak to ensure, I appreciate my citizen colleagues urging upon you to do the bold thing. I do need to say that though my personal confidence in these systems is shredding daily, I still hold on to the thread that our collective commitment to the integrity of public process matters. And so saying that, I would not dare come here and ask any one of you to disclose information that you are not legally or ethically able to. That said, we need to figure out how this information, the full unexpurgated text of this complaint, becomes public immediately. Because it will get out. So whatever we can do as the public, and I'm recognizing that there's great power sitting on this side of the desk as opposed to that side of the desk, because while you're bound by certain rules, we, your public, are not. What I also have come to appreciate about the forum of these boards is the power of nevertheless. No, they're not going to answer your correspondence. No, they do not come to the meeting. And somehow I know that we figured out that we did it anyway. And so I want to applaud and encourage you to go forward with a memorandum of understanding. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be locked and loaded. And now that you have that, please start working with all deliberate haste on those 50 complaints. We, sitting in the confidence, knowing that those complaints and your, whatever the form of the reports are now, will be posted and made public. But as we used to do as I close, when sitting on your side and speaking to those of us here, talked about our reciprocal responsibility to you, to be witnesses and to be supporters, means that we need to be informed. And so I'm going to say to my community here, encourage those who are not in the room today to view the videotape that we know will be posted, and we are so grateful to Metro Television Network. We're very grateful to you. I will note that as we started this meeting, I did post and pin on my Twitter account, and I still call it Twitter, that the meeting was in progress and there was a link. And I checked in about 20 minutes later and found out that the live feed on both channels had been superseded by other important civic meetings that are occurring right now. Nevertheless, the full recording, and y'all still post this on the website, on the YouTube channel, right? I think that's right. Right. We want to make sure that we remind ourselves that the full recording will be available soon. We promise to circulate that link among our publics, our organizations, and our communities. If you will just promise to make sure that you post absolutely everything you have and you can at the earliest possible time. And then together, both you and we will continue to call out and call up all those who need to be held to accountability. All of those who work for us by our taxpayer money, who hold temporary positions of power by our vote, and who should also dwell safely with us in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes our public comment section. I appreciate everyone's passion and their opinions and comments pertaining to the Community Review Board and this complaint that came in. I am sure and confident that you all will see this complaint very soon. But I do want to remind us that this past year has been a very tumultuous year for the Community Oversight Board, now Community Review Board. It was a lot of days where we were on Capitol Hill fighting. It seemed like a fight that we were not going to win. We were outnumbered, and we couldn't understand why, at the time, we had to go through this. But what I want to say is that this complaint that we have in front of us, that we received last week, if the allegations are true and are found to be true, we know why we had to go on Capitol Hill to fight. We will know why soon enough. And so with that being said, I want to encourage you all to continue to walk alongside us. We have, all of us, all 7 of us, including the executive director, have put everything we have into this board. And that means that as things come up and as things arise, we will ensure that we let you know, the public who have not failed to walk beside us, as much as we possibly can, as soon as we possibly can. That is why we call this meeting today. That is why we have been at odds with Metro Legal consistently. But I want you to know that this fight is not over by any means. And if you are committed, as we are committed, we still have a long way to go. So that concludes our meeting. If there's anything else, Member Nguyen.
Yeah, I'd like to say, speaking truth to power is not an easy thing to do.
No,
Usually when people do it, it's to improve the working conditions inside of a company or a business, or to right a wrong. So I want to personally thank this retired police officer for being a police whistleblower in this complaint. No matter how it works out, it takes a lot of courage to do this, and we should encourage people to report anytime they see any kind of malfeasance inside their government. So I wanted to thank him personally.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
I did want to make a point of clarification that it is only one complaint, but it contains dozens of allegations. So that's what encompasses the 61 pages. And I also wanted to close with this because we heard from the public, and this is the code of ethics for the police department. It says, as a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve the community, to safeguard lives and property, to protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder, and to respect the constitutional rights to all, to liberty, equality, and justice. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all and will behave in a manner that does not bring discredit to me or my agency. I will maintain courageous calm in the face of danger, scorn, or ridicule, develop self-restraint, and be consistently mindful of the welfare of others. Honest in thought and deed, both in my personal and official life, I will be exemplary in obeying the law and the regulations of my department. Whatever I see or hear of a confidential nature or that is confided to me in my official capacity will be kept ever secret unless revelation is necessary in the performance of my duty. I will never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, political beliefs, aspirations, animosities, or friendships to influence my decisions. With no compromise for crime and with relentless prosecution of criminals, I will enforce the law courteously and appropriately without fear or favor, malice or ill will, never employing unnecessary force or violence, and never accepting gratuities. I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust to be held so as long as I am true to the ethics of police service. I will never engage in acts of corruption or bribery, oath of office and law enforcement code of ethics 1.30, nor will I condone such acts by other police officers. I will cooperate with all legally authorized agencies and their representatives in the pursuit of justice. I know that I alone am responsible for my own standard of professional performance and will take every reasonable opportunity to enhance and improve my level of knowledge and competence. I will constantly strive to achieve these objectives and ideals, dedicating myself before God and to my chosen profession, law enforcement. That is from the MMPD Department Manual 1.30.030, the Code of Ethics.
Thank you. Member Holloway?
Thank you. This complaint came out just the right time. It's energizing us to work even harder. But we gotta realize God works in mysterious ways. And that's the reason why
All right. I need to go back and read the appeal statement just for, to abide by the rules. Pursuant to the provisions of 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County Community Review Board may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. That is our appeal statement. I would like to thank you all for coming and supporting the Community Review Board. We will be available for any questions after this meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. All in favor? We are adjourned.
See all y'all next month now.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.